I'm Lucy Blundell. I'm an indie developer, and I'm here today to talk about getting your game noticed and how to make it stand out on the store. Now, there's a load of ways to do this. There's things like descriptions on the store, there's trailers, sometimes there's advertising, obviously your price, and if there's a sale, that's important, genres and things like that. Even if the game has been nominated for any awards, there's loads of things that you can do to get your game noticed, obviously. But I'm here really today to talk more about the visual side of things. Like, how do you get people to read the description? How do you get people to click the trailer? How do you get people to come to the storefront and make them stay? In other words, like, how do you get to catch their eye? Maybe I should have called the talk how to use your game or your game's artwork to catch the eye of the consumer. I don't know. But let's go with it. Okay, so who am I? So yes, I'm Lucy Blundell. I have worked in gaming for 8 years, and I also go by Kinmoku. My kind of games are called Games by Kinmoku. And yes, I studied animation at university, and before that I was doing art and graphic design, and I've been drawing and painting ever since I was a little girl. And yeah, my animation degree was very vague. We did things like storyboarding, audio, music, script writing, like everything to create an animation from scratch. And instead of going into animation, I decided to go into games. But yeah, that course helped me have a kind of a bit of everything kind of skills, which is why I'm where I am today. But before I became indie, I was a graphic design manager at EA Chillingo. Back then they were just Chillingo, and I was kind of a junior graphic designer, but we got acquired a few years later. And yeah, I think at Chillingo, like, it was a mobile game publisher. We covered I probably worked on over 250 games, because back then we'd have like one or two games release a week, and we had to make sure that each of them looked good enough, with the icons nice, with the screenshots good, and so on. So that was my job, and yeah, I did that for about 5 years, and then I kind of wanted to work on my own thing, and I became an indie developer, and I worked on a project for about a year before making One Night Stand. Unfortunately, that project is still kind of on hold. I will go back to it one day. But yeah, I was kind of lost in development, and I wanted to make something that was a bit shorter. So One Night Stand was originally made for NaNoRenO Game Jam, and that was in 2016. And yeah, it was a really good experience, but it was crazy, like, how it kind of took off. I remember just uploading it to itch.io, and then a few days later it got picked up by kind of big French YouTubers, and then like a week or two later it was picked up by PewDiePie, Markiplier, all these YouTubers that until then I didn't even understand what Let's Plays were. Maybe I'm a bit too old for that. But yeah, like, it was crazy, and then kind of off that, I developed it into a full game, and yeah, it did really well. It got nominated for Excellence in Narrative at IGF, and an honourable mention at Amaze, and then even in 2017 I won the New Development Talent Award at Women in Games, so it was quite crazy. And I think, like, a lot of that has got to do with the rotoscope art style. It sets it apart from a lot of other visual novels. It's quite full of life. It's very eye-catching. It's yeah, you kind of notice animations like that. It's nice to use that technique, I guess. And yeah, I I guess, kind of the rough story of One Night Stand. But yeah, like, I am definitely more of an artist and a graphic designer, and maybe even a scriptwriter, than I am a programmer. I'm definitely a noob programmer, and I do get a lot of questions from people like, how do I make a game? What engine do you use? How do I code? And it's quite, I don't know, I can't really give advice. All I know is if I can do it, you can do it. There's a lot of resources and help online, and it's thanks to people like people on Lemmasoft forums and people on Twitter like that I'm able to do what I do. So thank you. But yeah, without getting too sidetracked, my next project is Memories, which is on the right. That is a working title, but I've been working on it now for about a year, and it's a very intimate story about a girl's life. I can't really say much more than that at the moment, but I do hope that you will check it out. So, I think a lot of people might underestimate graphic design. A lot of people don't hire graphic designers for their games. And that's fine, I know not everyone has the budget, but I think it's very important to know that kind of the elements of graphic design and why it's important. So, you know, we hear the phrase, don't judge a book by its cover. We hear it a lot. But you know what? People do. People will always do this. It's kind of human nature to, you know, judge from appearance. Think of why people wear suits. And why you trust someone like that over someone who's kind of scruffy, or like smelly, or like, you know what I mean. Appearance is very important, and it's important for games, more so than books, because games are very, very visual. Artwork is very important in games. And yeah, people will make these quick kind of judgments. You know, like they might think, oh, it looks kind of bad, and they'll just assume like it is. You know, they don't care if it's the best game ever. If it kind of looks bad, they'll just skip past it. So yeah, like, you know, how does a game kind of look bad? Well, I think we can all kind of make our own judgments here, but you know, does it use kind of stock photos or clip art or fonts like Comic Sans, you know, like, does it do these kind of things? Does it not have any aesthetic? You know, these things say that this game is not bespoke, it's not this fully creative experience, so it's kind of a half-baked idea, I guess. So yeah, I guess an easy battle to win is to make it look good. There are loads of battles with how to kind of make a successful video game, especially for an indie. But if it looks good, you've won, like, I'd say even like half the battle. You know, as long as you get people to that store, that's what's really important. Title is also very important. I think the two things that you see up front is the game name and the kind of promotional artwork that goes with it. And this is, of course, if you're just kind of scrolling on storefronts like Steam or the iTunes store or whatever. It's different if your game is spoken about in a load of articles, of course. But we want people to kind of first notice it in the first place, I guess. You just need to make sure you grab people's attention. Never overestimate people. Well, they'll be interested. It's like they probably won't be. You know, there's a lot of information out there now, and you know how people kind of how people scroll on their phones and things. People barely look at, you know, you might get a second, so you've got to win them over in that time. So yeah, I have a couple of examples here. The first one is Crossbow Challenge, which was a game I worked at Chilingo. I don't think it ever came out, unfortunately, but when it came in to us, it had the UI kind of design on the left, and it was kind of, yeah, it's kind of like a mess. I don't really know where to click. The art style looks very kind of, each icon is completely different. I don't know if they took them from Google Images or what, but of course you could run into copyright issues, and it just generally doesn't look great. So we kind of went in and created the image on the right, which kind of inspired by kind of Wii Sports and things like that. for the kind of casual audience that the game was trying to attract. But yeah, like, UI is important in graphic design, and these kind of things can link to the store itself and create an overall general kind of cohesive aesthetic. On the bottom left, I have kind of a concept art for One Night Stand. This was never used in the game, but I was originally planning on having quite a kind of hyper anime art style. I thought it would be easier to draw, but I thought about my target audience, and again, thinking about your target audience is very important for a graphic designer. I wanted to appeal to not really visual novel fans, but more people outside of that, a more casual audience. One Night Stand, its gameplay is pretty much just clicking the mouse, so it's very, very simple. And I feel like anyone could play it. So I was trying to target kind of a casual audience that would find this story quite interesting, probably like young adults. And I didn't think that this art style would work, especially in the West, because it's quite Eastern, obviously. So yeah, audience is very, very important. And yeah, you just kind of, I guess, don't go with your first idea. So on both of these examples, like, you need to refine, you need to work at it. You need to make sure that it does exactly what you want it to. And if you're stuck on how to do this, like, always get like a second opinion. Twitter is good for this. You can ask friends as well, or Reddit, or things like that. But of course, like, after a few iterations, you might start feeling really confident with it, and you're still gonna have people say, like, I don't like that, that doesn't work. And I think when you reach that point, you need to take it with a pinch of salt. You know, art is subjective, it is not a science, and it shouldn't be treated as such. It's very much personal for each person, and obviously, and yeah, if you're happy with it and the majority are happy with it, I say stick with it and go forward. So the importance of graphic design, like, where is graphic design used? So we've seen that it's used in UI already, and it's used in like artwork, but it's used in like advertising, promotional art, screenshots even, trailers of course, icons, UI, and sort of the general aesthetic. So with screenshots, this is more of a kind of iPhone and iPad thing, and probably Google, but these can also be designed. So on these screenshots, they're from Icicle on Thin Ice, which is a fantastic little game, and we have captions on these, and these captions lead from the first to the last screenshot, and they tell the story of the game through the screens, and it's a good way to kind of grab people's attention, is to tell them what this is. Don't expect them to read the description, as I mentioned. And then, like, the first screenshot here is very important. It has like a slice of the game's different kind of looks almost, and it looks really cool. It's like, oh, this game doesn't just all look the same. It's like a visual feast. So the developer is kind of wants to scream about this and like say, hey, look at this. And that first screenshot is so important because it's the first one that you see when you're on the store. Most people aren't going to scroll through all of them. So yeah, nail that first one. It has to be the most important screenshot. Of course, always use the correct dimensions. You'd be surprised like how often I see sort of stretched iPad and iPhone screens, and it just makes your game look really bad. Just don't do that. Always take the effort to take the screenshots on the device that they're meant for. I have an App Store icon of Tiny Troopers there. That is for Tiny Troopers 1, I think. It's probably changed now, but this was the one that we came up with. And I could do a whole presentation on App Store icons. But just to keep it kind of short and sweet, usually having a main character really helps. Having some kind of 3D element, like maybe having a border and character pop out, really helps. Bright colours, kind of striking lines. and of course, like, having some kind of action going on. Like, his face is very expressive, and I think that's why we see a lot of kind of these clash games with people screaming, and it's very, like, popping out. I hate using that term, sorry, but it really kind of grabs your attention, and when you see that kind of expression, it's very, like, it's very attention-grabbing. And then, we've got adverts that we use across, like, all kinds of things. And like, general aesthetic. I think kind of the best example of this is Persona 5. It's a gorgeous game. The UI kind of matches the trailer, kind of matches sort of other aspects of the UI, like main menu. Like, even kind of the gameplay and the promotional artwork, it all works together, and I think it's one of the best examples. Another one is Tokyo Mirage Sessions, which, because it was on Wii U, kind of got a bit forgotten about, but that's another game that's obviously, like, it looks fantastic, so I do recommend checking it out as a good example of graphic design. But today, because this is quite a big topic, I'm just going to be focusing kind of on, like, adverts and promotional art and general aesthetic. So let's go on. So storefronts. So this is obviously from Steam, and it's One Night Stand. And storefronts are very, kind of, each one is very different. Here we have the description, you can see the genres, screenshots, little trailer icon there, and the promotional art. And these all should be cohesive. They should all look like they belong in the same game. In One Night Stand's case, all the colours are very similar, and this is very, very kind of a strong kind of visual, how do I call it? It's, you know, it's a cohesive kind of aesthetic. Now, I'm not saying always just have the same colour palette. Use what works for each game. With Icicle, it's a very vibrant game that looks different, but that still has that same kind of chopped out art style. You need to kind of work with what goes with your game. But with One Night Stand, it's very much all this kind of colour, this kind of soft early morning glow. You just want to make sure that it's never mistaken for another game. Everything should look kind of similar. At the end of the day, recognition is what we're looking for. And your choice of screenshots is very important. So try and have a different screenshot. Never have a load of them that look the same. Otherwise it makes your game look a lot smaller than it is, and that will put off a lot of people. People want to know that they're getting something that's really vibrant and different, and there's more to it. And you want to show that. If your game is kind of like a shmup that only kind of stays on, like, maybe one background, then maybe just put like 2 or 3 screenshots up. Don't put like 10 if they all look the same. It won't help. And yeah, like, you can see here that I've just used kind of plain raw screenshots, unlike iPhone, where you can put kind of captions and characters and make them really kind of fun and casual. You need to bear in mind your audience, and I do think captions and things like that aren't really appreciated on Steam. So, adverts and promotional artwork. So, I think here consistency is key. You need to use the same image for promotional artwork, to the point of being really, really sick of seeing it. Like this image of One Night Stand, I have seen a lot, and in a way, I wish I could change it to something else, but that's not the point. The point is that it's recognisable, so every time that you hear about this game, you see that image. That's what you want to aim for. It also ties to, like, the first screenshot. Maybe the first screenshot should actually be the promotional artwork. Because in One Night Stand's case, I used the image of her back, kind of lying down, and a lot of people take that as the promotional artwork, so do bear that in mind. Obviously, colour palette we've mentioned before. Having different logos is very important. So you will have kind of adverts and artwork sizes, and they'll all be different. And you need to make sure that your logo works in each situation. So it helps to have a more kind of horizontal one, and then a more kind of vertical or square type logo. And then this way, you can make the most of the space. With the small Steam banner, I originally had the horizontal One Night Stand logo, and it took up the whole image, which meant that I couldn't see the character, and that was very important for me. So I redesigned kind of the logo to fit. So having like different logos really, really helps in this case. And yeah, the image on the right is the album artwork, and in this case you can see it's obviously quite different. It's her playing guitar, and in this case I think it's fine to have different artwork. These are people who are visiting the album, who want to download the songs, and they will have already played the game. You've already hooked these people with the original artwork, so you're almost rewarding them with something new. But even so, it still has the same aesthetic, the same colour scheme, and so on. But yeah, do not use kind of different artwork, like completely different for each banner. It's not a good idea. Testing. So obviously One Night Stand is not really good battle. I just dropped that on to test it out. Does my banner look good against all the others? And I think it's quite eye-catching because the colours are so different. I find on Steam that a lot of games are very dark, so having quite a bright banner was actually quite a good idea. You might design something in your program, and then all of a sudden you put it on the store and it's like, oh, those colours don't look very good, or it might just not appear how you thought it would. So always put it kind of in context. That really, really helps. And yeah, animated GIFs, if you get the chance. So things like itch.io and social media and websites and stuff, use animated GIFs. Don't use like GIFs of trailers and things that are like really long or really different. Like kind of keep to that promotional artwork, but maybe just move it a little bit, or animate it, or however it will work. I think things like that can really help catch people's eye. And you can see it moving there. So, let's go into promotional artwork a little bit. So on the other page I also mentioned guidelines, and as you can see the guidelines this is for very old, out-of-date Apple artwork. It's Megadeth Pixel by About Fun, which is a very gorgeous looking game. And you can see here like the red areas are kind of the dead zones. Like, it's very unlikely that you will see that. But the amount of people that will put their main characters there, or they will not put anything there at all and just like focus on the bit in the middle. It's like, you can't do that. You need to make Apple's job, or Apple in this case, you need to make their job really easy. You need that like perfect artwork. It's more likely to get promoted if you follow the rules. So yeah, always stick to guidelines. Use of action. So what is actually going on in the image? Action is so important. Main character, if there is one, is usually a great idea. Express the gameplay in the title. Like with Megadeth Pixel, we've got this pixel crashing through, and with One Night Stand we have like her kind of coyly kind of looking away. That gets across the awkwardness of the game. So always try and do that if possible. Again, an attractive colour palette. You want it to look really, really fantastic. And if you're able to use like little tips and tricks like borders and highlights and blurs, vignettes, kind of think Instagram. Like why do photos on Instagram stand out so well? Try and put that kind of thing in your artwork. So with Megadeth, you can see that the black in the foreground is kind of blurred out. Helps you focus more on the main character in the middle. So yeah. So your game's aesthetic. it should permeate through everything. So your promotional art, your trailer, and so on. We've covered that. But here you can see like kind of the storefront of Itch.io, and I just took like a random screenshot. And you can see that some are stronger than others. And some are stronger than others, and others are more appealing than others. For example, like for me, I really like kind of Date Almost Anything and World of Horror. My eyes kind of immediately go to those. But for other people, like Cultist Simulator or like Power Drill Massacre, they might be more their thing. So, like I say, it's not a science so much, it's very much a personal thing, but you need to kind of show your game's kind of worth in these images to attract the people. It needs to be done well, in other words. Now, there's a couple of games, like, I think Hustle Cat's logo is really, it's like the clearest there. It's really good logo, but I don't know anything about that game. I could click on it, but I'd probably rather click on Date Almost Anything or World of Horror. So, I don't know if it's about cat. It says, a dating sim cat cafe. Right, that sounds fantastic, but immediately, I have to spend time to actually read that. And most people aren't going to do that. Like I say, you can't expect people's like interest to be that high. They will gravitate towards something that's already grabbed their attention. And World of Horror, I mean, I've played the demo. I don't even like horror games. I'm definitely more into the Date Almost Anything thing. But World of Horror is like, it's a fantastic looking game. It's kind of got this what's this 1-bit adventure game. It's almost like Game Boy stuff. It's so cool. I don't. The thing is, it's been inspired by that, but it has taken it to another level, to its own place. And I do recommend checking it out if you've not seen it before. I think it's a really, really good aesthetic. So what I heard a few years ago at GDC, and I can't 100% say that it was this person. I can't quite remember. But I think it was from the Monument Valley developers, and they say base a game off an illustration, and that's always stuck with me ever since I've heard it. Like here we have like E-Boy and Hokusai. I've just kind of put a few images of things that I find quite appealing. The Dragon Ball manga, like a kind of this shonen black and white aesthetic, is really cool. Jun Kumemori is an artist I've discovered recently, and I would love to see like a point-and-click adventure in that kind of style. The manga one. Imagine seeing the fighting game like that, or Hokusai, some kind of, I don't know, some sort of puzzle game, or a game like Mario's Picture, like maybe about a swan, or E-Boy. I always see these isometric pixel artworks, and I just wish I could walk around them. It's just really, really cool. So you can get inspiration from things like this. These are just some that I've picked that I kind of like. But I think it's a nice way, if you're struggling with artwork or how to kind of start off with artwork, I think this is a really good way of doing it. And it doesn't just have to be illustrations either, it can be other games. Like here we have Earthbound and Undertale, Undertale obviously being inspired by Earthbound. And I've even put Hotel Dusk in there because that inspired me to do rotoscoping for One Night Stand. Our styles are obviously quite different, like in Hotel Dusk it has like shadow and more scratchy kind of lines, and probably more detail as well. They've obviously had like a bigger team to do this kind of thing, but it inspired me. And if you kind of take that inspiration and make it your own thing, that's fantastic. But you can be inspired by like anything that has a really strong aesthetic. Things like eras, places, fashion. That image in the bottom left is kind of like a, I don't know, 80s Miami kind of thing. We've got like Ghost in the Shell, which I think kind of inspired The Matrix. Films are another great source of inspiration. Princess Kaguya there, which I really, really love the expressiveness of the brushstrokes. Like I say, you can be inspired by anything. It just needs to have like this kind of strong aesthetic, and you need to just kind of stick with it. You know, classical artwork as well can be a really kind of good source of inspiration. And then I hear people, you know, say like, or maybe you're thinking like, well, it's fine for you to say, you're a designer. You know, I can't draw, I can't do these things. Like, for people that are worrying about this, I think you just need to, as we've discussed, have that strong foundation. Follow that thing that's inspiring you. Make it your own. Stick with it. Ask for people's opinions on it. The visual aesthetic can also feed into other aspects, like the gameplay, the audio. Great examples of this, and I probably should have put images up, are Florence, which I played last night, and it's a beautiful game. It's about first love, and it has that innocence in its art style, but then the love interest is, I think, is a cello player, and that is then brought into the kind of the UI, how you interact with the game, and then also the audio as well, and it all wraps together in this beautiful package. I definitely recommend checking it out. And Monument Valley, of course, which looks very inspired by kind of Escher's kind of drawings, that uses the gameplay to mess with those perspectives, spinning and rotating things, distorting them. It's such a fantastic game that does this so well. Now, they're some of the best examples. Obviously, like for the average person, you know, who doesn't have an artist, try and get one. Try and set aside a small budget. Or you can make designer or artist friends. You can consider a revenue share. I find this is a nice way to kind of work with people and get them more invested in your project. Of course, you can kind of ask for free help, but make sure, like, you don't expect anyone to do it. Make sure you state, this is unpaid. Some people will be willing to do it. Other people will be really annoyed. But just don't go up front and don't tell people exactly what the deal is. Be very clear with people. I once worked for free as a 3D artist after I graduated, and it helped me get my job at Schlingo. So for some people, they will want to do it, they will want the experience. So people like that are always an option. Keep it simple. You know, you could do it yourself if you keep it simple. Don't choose an art style that's very realistic and difficult. And with that, you can learn some basic design skills yourself. There's a load of resources online. Obviously, you can kind of read books on this subject. I recommend that. And yeah, like, if you really, really can't do artwork, then I'm guessing someone is doing it for you. And you just need to speak with them and make sure, like, they're doing exactly what you want. If it's a big team of artists, like a background artist and character artist and an animator and so on, you just need to make sure that they're all kind of working to the same style guide, that same aesthetic that works, and then make sure that you have that. Otherwise, they might have certain kind of egos or efforts being stronger than others. So yeah, it's very important to keep it kind of very cohesive. And it's not just about, if you're hiring an artist, it's not just about like ticking a box. That background that I needed is done. I don't talk to them anymore. Like, try and work with them to help you with your kind of, your adverts and your promotional art and things like that. And I guess that's it. So thank you very much for listening. You can find some resources where you can find like artists and inspiration if you are an artist. You can get on Pinterest, on Tumblr, and Twitter is a great place to find kind of inspiration from certain artists and artists themselves. Behance and ArtStation and DeviantArt, you can find artists who are actually kind of willing to work and things. And of course, if you want to kind of teach yourself, like, all of these things are useful. Seeing other artwork is always really, really good, and practicing but going to like libraries, reading books on graphic design, or even like just books on kind of artwork, or better yet, going to art galleries and just seeing like what is it that makes I don't know, Picasso or Turner or Waterhouse or whoever kind of your favourite artists are, what makes them have this style and you know it's them. So yeah, I hope that was inspiring for some people. Of course, you can do what I did and have your games aesthetic permeate through everything, including your presentation on the subject itself. These kind of ink block splodges are from Memory's kind of aesthetic, as is the font. And you can put it onto things like your website, your business cards, and so on. So yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. That's where I'm usually most active, Games by Kinmoku. It's also Games by Kinmoku on Facebook. And gamesbykinmoku.com is my website where you can see the blog and get any updates on my next game. So yeah, thank you very much.